The morning sun shone bright over Millbrook Elementary School. 37 excited children climbed onto the yellow school bus, chattering about their field trip to the Star Observatory. Jake Martinez pressed his face against the window, watching. The trees blur past. At 8 years old, he loved anything with buttons and wires. "I heard they have a real telescope that can see other planets," said Sophie Williams, sliding into the seat next to him. At 10, she was one of the older kids. On the trip, her blonde hair was tied back in a ponytail, and her blue eyes sparkled with excitement. Behind them, 7-year-old Danny Chun sat quietly, reading a book about space. He was small for his age, but very smart. Amy Foster, 9 years old with curly red hair, bounced in her seat next to Danny. She could never sit still when she was excited. Mrs. Peterson, their teacher, stood at the front of the bus. "Remember, everyone stays together. No wandering off when we get there." The children nodded, but their minds were on the stars and planets they would see. None of them noticed the strange silver object following their bus high in the sky. Captain Vexstar watched the yellow vehicle through his ship's viewing screen. The alien had green skin and 4 arms. His large black eyes showed no emotion as he studied the humans below. He had been watching this planet for months, learning about the creatures that live there. "These humans are perfect," he said to his second-in-command, Krill. "They are weak and stupid. Their young will bring good prices at the slave markets." Krill was smaller than his captain, but just as cruel. "The neural dampeners are ready, sir. They will make the adult humans sleep instantly." "Good. We take the young ones. They will be easier to control than the adults." The bus pulled into the observatory parking lot. The children poured out, looking up at the big white dome that housed the telescope. They had no idea that death watched them from above. Inside the observatory, Dr. Martinez, no relation to Jake, welcomed the group. "Today you will see the wonders of space," he said with a smile. "Follow me to the telescope room." The children walked through the building, asking questions and pointing at the pictures of planets on the walls. Jake stopped to look at a display about satellites. Sophie helped younger kids read the signs. Danny memorized every fact he saw. Amy tried to touch everything despite the "do not touch" signs. That's when the attack began. A silver ship dropped from the sky without warning. It was the size of a school bus, but shaped like a teardrop. Strange blue light shot from its bottom, hitting the observatory building. Every adult inside fell to the ground, unconscious. Mrs. Peterson collapsed in the middle of explaining safety rules. Dr. Martinez dropped where he stood. The other adults with the group all fell asleep instantly. The children looked around in confusion. "Mrs. Peterson?" Sophie called out. "Are you okay?" But their teacher didn't move. None of the adults moved. The ship landed in the parking lot with a soft thud. A door opened in its side, and aliens walked out. They looked like tall, thin humans, but with green skin and 4 arms. They wore silver suits and carried strange weapons. "Look at them," Captain Vexstar said as he stepped onto the ground. "So small and helpless. This will be easy." The aliens walked into the building. The children huddled together, scared and confused. Some of the younger ones started to cry. "What do they want?" whispered Jake. "I don't know," Sophie said. She moved to stand in front of the smaller children. "But we stick together." Captain Vexstar looked at the young humans with satisfaction. Perfect specimens. "The buyers will pay well for these." "What about the adults?" asked Krill. "Leave them. They are too big and too strong when awake. These little ones will be much easier to handle." The aliens used strange devices to put the children to sleep, but the devices were made for adult human brains. They worked, but not as well as they should have. The children fell unconscious, but their minds stayed partly awake. One by one, The aliens carried the sleeping children to their ship. Jake felt like he was in a dream. He could hear what was happening, but couldn't move his body. Sophie tried to fight, but her arms wouldn't work. Danny's mind stayed sharp even as his body went limp. Amy felt angry but couldn't show it. The ship's cargo hold was filled with metal cages. The aliens put the children inside, 2 or 3 per cage. The cages were built for adult prisoners from other worlds. The bars were spaced wide apart, and the locks were simple mechanical devices. "They will sleep for several hours," Krill reported. "By then we will be far from this planet." Captain Vexstar nodded. "Set course for the slave markets of Taurus Station. We will be rich after this." The ship lifted off, leaving the unconscious adults behind. In the cargo hold, 37 human children lay sleeping in their cages. But their minds were working, even in sleep. They were learning, planning, and getting ready. The aliens had made their first mistake. They thought human children were weak and helpless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. As the ship flew through space, Jake's fingers twitched. Slightly, Sophie's eyes moved under her closed eyelids. Danny's brain kept working, even in sleep. Amy's hands slowly made small fists. The children were waking up. And they were not happy. Captain Vexstar sat in his command chair, counting the money he would make. He had raided dozens of worlds and captured thousands of slaves. This was just another easy job. He had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had taken the children of Earth, and there was nothing in the galaxy more dangerous than a human parent who couldn't find their child. The ship flew deeper into space, carrying its cargo of young humans. In the cargo hold, the children began to stir. Their adventure was just beginning. Jake's eyes opened first. His head felt fuzzy, like when he had the flu last winter. He tried to remember where he was. The observatory. The green aliens. The ship. He sat up slowly and looked around. He was in a metal cage with Danny and a 6-year-old girl named Lucy. The cage was big enough for 3 adult humans, but it felt huge with just the 3 children inside. "Danny," Jake whispered, shaking his friend's shoulder. "Wake up." Danny's eyes fluttered open. He looked confused for a moment. Then his face went pale. "We're on the alien ship." "Yeah," Jake said. "Are you okay?" Danny nodded and looked around the cargo hold. There were 12 cages total, each holding 2 or 3 children. Most of the kids were still sleeping. In the cage next to them, Sophie was already awake. She was trying to wake up Amy and a younger boy named Tim. Sophie's face was determined, not scared. She had always been brave. "Sophie," Jake called quietly. "How long have you been awake?" "A few minutes," she said. "I've been listening to the aliens. They walk by every 10 minutes to check on us." Jake was impressed. Even trapped in a cage, Sophie was thinking like a leader. "What's the plan?" Sophie looked at the bars of her cage. They were thick metal, but spaced far apart. "I think we can fit through these bars. They're made for bigger people." Jake looked at his own cage bars. Sophie was right. The aliens had built these cages for adult prisoners. They hadn't thought about how small human children could be. More children began waking up. There were whispers and some quiet crying as the kids realized where they were. Sophie quickly took charge. "Everyone listen," she said in a loud whisper. "We're on an alien ship. They took us from the observatory, but we're going to get out of here." "How?" asked Amy, who was now fully awake. Her curly red hair was messy from sleep, but her eyes were alert. "We're smaller than they think we are," Sophie said. "Look at these bars. I bet most of us can squeeze through." Jake studied his cage bars. He was skinny, even for an 8-year-old. "I can definitely fit." "Me too," said Danny. One by one, the children tested the bars. The older kids, like Sophie, had to push hard, but they could squeeze through. The younger ones slipped through easily. "Okay," Sophie said, "but we don't all escape at once. We need to be smart about this." She had everyone gather around her cage to listen. Even the scared 6-year-olds stopped crying to hear her plan. "Jake, you're good with electronics, right?" Sophie asked. Jake nodded. His dad was an electrician, and Jake had been taking apart radios and toys since he was 5. "You squeeze out first and look around. Find out how this ship works. Danny, you're really smart. You figure out how the aliens think. Watch their patterns." Danny straightened up. He liked puzzles and patterns. This was just a bigger puzzle than usual. "Amy, you're fast and quiet. You help the little kids stay calm and keep watch for the aliens." Amy smiled. She had always been good at taking care of younger children. "What about the rest of us?" asked Tim, who was 8 years old with sandy brown hair. "We wait and help when it's time," Sophie said. "Everyone has a job. No one gets left behind." The plan started immediately. Jake squeezed through his cage bars. It was tight, but he made it. The cargo hold was dimly lit, with strange alien symbols glowing on the walls. Jake could hear the hum of engines and the beep of computers. He had always loved figuring out how things worked. Now his life depended on it. He found a small grate near the floor. It looked like it led to the ship's maintenance areas. Jake was small enough to fit through it easily. Meanwhile, Danny watched the alien guards. They came by every 10 minutes, just like Sophie had said. They walked the same path each time and never looked closely at the cages. They seemed bored with guard duty. Amy kept the younger children calm by telling them quiet stories and making up games they could play in the cages. She promised them they would all go home soon. Sophie worked on keeping everyone organized. She made sure each child knew their job and knew to stay quiet when the aliens came by. After an hour, Jake returned through the maintenance grate. His clothes were dirty, but his eyes were excited. "This ship is amazing," he whispered to the others. "But it's not built for security. It's built for cargo. The aliens think once something is in a cage, it stays there. What did you find?" Sophie asked. "The whole ship is connected by maintenance tunnels. I can get anywhere. The computer systems are different from ours, but not too different. And the aliens are really lazy. They have robots doing most of the work." Danny had been watching the guards. "They check on us every 10 minutes, but between checks, they go back to their posts. We have 9 minutes each time when no one is watching." "Perfect," Sophie said. "Jake, next time you go out, see if you can find a way to contact Earth. Danny, keep watching the guards. Amy, start getting the little kids ready to move if we need to." "Move where?" asked Lucy, the 6-year-old in Jake's cage. Sophie smiled at her. "Wherever we want. This is our ship. Now, the aliens just don't know it yet." As if hearing her words, Captain Vextar walked into the cargo hold with 2 guards. The children quickly pretended to be asleep or scared. Sophie made herself look small and helpless. "How are our valuable cargo?" the captain asked. "Still sleeping." "Sir," said one guard. "The young ones are taking longer to wake up than expected." Captain Vextar looked at the cages. He saw what he expected to see. Frightened children huddled together, too scared to cause trouble. Good. Keep them quiet. "We reached the slave markets in 2 days." After the aliens left, Jake squeezed out of his cage again. This time, he went deeper, into the ship's systems. He found the main computer room, the engine room, and the communication center. The ship's computers were protected by passwords, but the aliens used simple patterns. Danny had taught him about patterns last year during math class. Jake started figuring out how to break into the ship's systems. Back in the cargo hold, More children were squeezing out of their cages. They formed teams just like Sophie had planned. Some kept watch, some explored, and some took care of the younger kids. The aliens checked on them every 10 minutes, but they only saw what they expected: scared children in cages. They never looked closely enough to notice that the children were different each time. By the end of the day, the children had mapped the entire ship. They knew where the aliens slept, where they worked, and where they kept their weapons. They had found the food storage, the water systems, and the waste disposal. Most importantly, Jake had figured out how to access the ship's computer systems. He couldn't control everything yet, but he was learning fast. "Tomorrow we start fighting back," Sophie told the group as they settled in for the night. "Remember, we're not just prisoners anymore. We're taking this ship." The children slept better that night, even in the uncomfortable cages. They had hope now. They had a plan. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They thought they had captured helpless human children. Instead, they had brought aboard 37 young humans who were smarter, braver, and more determined than they could imagine. The real adventure was about to begin. The second day began with Jake disappearing into the maintenance tunnels before the aliens' first check. He had spent all night thinking about the ship's computer systems. Today he was going to do something about them. Sophie organized the other children into teams. She called it Operation Freedom, and every child had a job to do. "Remember," she whispered to everyone, "we look scared and helpless when the aliens come. But between their visits, we work." Amy led the little kid team. Her job was keeping the younger children calm and ready to hide when needed. She taught them hand signals so they could communicate without talking. Danny ran the watch team. He had figured out that the aliens had routines for everything. They ate at the same times, slept at the same times, and checked the cargo at the same times. Danny could predict where every alien would be at any moment. Jake led the tech team. It was mostly just him, but 10-year-old Maria helped when she could. Maria was good at puzzles and had steady hands for the delicate work. The first strike came at lunchtime. Jake had learned that all the aliens' food came from one central kitchen. The ship's computer controlled everything: temperature, mixing, serving. Jake had also found the cleaning supply storage. "This might make them sick," Jake told Sophie through the maintenance grate. "Are you sure we should do this?" Sophie thought about Mrs. Peterson lying unconscious on the observatory floor. She thought about being locked in a cage and sold as a slave. "They kidnapped us. They're going to sell us." "Yeah, I'm sure." Jake mixed cleaning chemicals into the aliens' food supply. Not enough to seriously hurt them, but enough to make them very, very sick. Within 2 hours, half the crew was too ill to work. Captain Vextar was furious. How did this happen? He demanded. "Unknown, sir," Krill replied, holding his stomach. "Perhaps the food storage system malfunctioned. Fix it. We cannot arrive at the slave markets with a sick crew." But while the aliens dealt with their food poisoning, Jake struck again. This time, he attacked the ship's power systems. He had studied the electrical diagrams for hours. Now he knew exactly which circuits to cross. The lights went out in the alien crew quarters. Then the air conditioning stopped working. Then the gravity generators started flickering on and off. "What is happening to my ship?" Captain Vextar roared. The aliens ran around trying to fix the problems, but every time they fixed one thing, something else broke. They never suspected that an 8-year-old boy was causing all their troubles. Meanwhile, Amy's team started the next phase. The children had discovered that alien hearing was very sensitive. Sounds that were normal to humans caused the aliens pain. When the aliens came for their regular check of the cargo hold, the children were ready. As soon as the aliens walked in, 37 young voices started screaming at the same time. Not scared screaming, angry screaming, war screams, battle cries, the kind of noise that human children make when they're really, truly mad. The aliens covered their ears and ran out of the cargo hold. Make them stop? Captain Vexstar ordered, but every time the aliens came back, the children screamed again. Soon the aliens stopped coming to check on them at all. Perfect, Sophie said. Now we can move around freely. Danny had been studying the ship's layout. The aliens sleep in quarters on the upper level. If we can get up there, ... Sophie smiled. Amy, how good are your climbing skills? Amy had always been the best climber in her class. Really good. Why? Because we're going to visit our captors while they sleep. That night, while the aliens tried to rest, the children struck again. Amy led a team through the air vents to the crew quarters. They couldn't get inside the rooms, but they could access the air system. Jake had taught them how to use the ship's communication system. Now Amy's voice echoed through every alien's room at once. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, she sang in the sweetest, most innocent voice she could manage. But she sang it at 3 a.m, when the aliens were trying to sleep. Then Tim joined in with Old MacDonald Had a Farm. Ben Lucy sang The Itsy Bitsy Spider. Soon all 37 children were singing different songs at the same time, their voices coming from the walls of every alien's bedroom. The aliens couldn't turn it off. Jake had locked them out of their own communication system. E-I-O. The children sang. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Captain Vexstar stumbled to his bridge, exhausted and angry. Shut off that noise. We cannot, sir, reported his chief engineer. Someone has taken control of our communication system. Who? How? The engineer looked confused. We do not know, sir. It appears to be coming from multiple locations throughout the ship. What the aliens didn't know was that the children had divided into small teams. Each team had found a different way to access the ship's systems. They were everywhere and nowhere, striking at random and disappearing before they could be caught. Jake's team sabotaged the food again, this time making it taste terrible instead of making the aliens sick. Danny's team rearranged tools and supplies, hiding important equipment and leaving alien instructions in the wrong places. Sophie's team began the most daring operation yet. They started freeing other prisoners. The children had discovered that the aliens had been raiding other worlds too. There were cages full of young creatures from a dozen different planets, all destined for the slave markets. We can't leave them here, Sophie said, when she saw a cage full of small, furry beings with big, sad eyes. But we don't know anything about them, Amy pointed out. We know they're prisoners just like us, Sophie replied. That's enough. The alien children were scared at first, but they quickly understood that the humans were trying to help. Soon Sophie had an army of young beings from across the galaxy, all working together to take over the ship. The final blow came when Jake accessed the ship's main computer. He couldn't control everything, but he could control enough to make life very difficult for the aliens. He made all the doors open and close randomly. He made the lights flash on and off. He made the temperature controls go crazy, making some rooms too hot and others too cold. Most importantly, he found the ship's navigation system. Sophie, he called through his communicator. He had built one, using spare parts. I know where we are and where we're going. Can you change course? Not yet, but I can send a message. Jake had found the ship's long-range communication array. It was more powerful than anything on Earth, but it worked on the same basic principles his dad had taught him about radios. Late that night, while the aliens huddled in their quarters trying to deal with malfunctioning systems and singing children, Jake sent a message across the galaxy. Hello, Earth, he transmitted. This is Jake Martinez. We're the kids from the Millbrook field trip. We've been kidnapped by aliens, but we're fighting back. We're on a ship heading for something called Taurus. Station, please come get us. We're going to try to stop this ship, but we could use some help." He sent the message 3 times, then destroyed the communication logs so the aliens wouldn't know what he had done. On the bridge, Captain Vexstar sat surrounded by flashing lights and random noises. His ship was falling apart around him. His crew was sick and exhausted, and he still didn't understand what was happening. "Sir," Krill reported, "the cargo is—" Singing again. From somewhere in the ship came the sound of 37 human children singing "Wheels on the Bus" at the top of their lungs, accompanied by what sounded like a dozen other alien species trying to learn the words. "Make it stop," Captain Vexstar whispered, but it was too late to stop anything. The children had taken his ship, his crew was defeated, and somewhere in the darkness of space, their message was racing toward Earth at the speed of light. The aliens had wanted to capture weak, helpless human children. Instead, they had brought aboard the most dangerous force in the galaxy, young humans who were angry, working together, and absolutely refused to give up. The rebellion had begun, and the children were winning. Back on Earth, Admiral Kate Morrison was having her morning coffee when the emergency alert came through. She was the head of Earth's defense force, a tough woman who had spent 30 years protecting humanity from threats both on Earth and in space. "Admiral," her aide rushed into her office. "We're receiving a distress call from space. It's from children." Admiral Morrison set down her coffee cup. "Children?" "Yes, ma'am. 37 children from Millbrook Elementary. They say they've been kidnapped by aliens." Admiral Morrison's face went very calm, very cold. She had 2 children of her own. "Show me the message." They played Jake's transmission. Admiral Morrison listened to the young voice explaining their situation, asking for help, promising to keep fighting. When it finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "How many ships can we get ready in 1 hour?" she asked. "Admiral, perhaps we should verify this first. How many ships?" She repeated, her voice like ice. "The entire Third Fleet, ma'am. 47 ships, including the UES Retribution. Get them ready. We launch in 1 hour." Admiral Morrison stood up and sent a message to every human colony, every space station, every ship in the fleet. "Someone has taken our children. We're going to get them back." The message that went out across human space was simple. "Our children have been taken. All available ships report for rescue operations immediately." Within 6 hours, the largest human fleet ever assembled was racing through space toward the coordinates Jake had provided. Meanwhile, on the alien ship, the situation was getting worse for Captain Vexstar. The children had taken control of more and more of his ship's systems. They had freed all the other alien prisoners, creating a small army of angry young beings from across the galaxy. "Sir," Krill reported, looking exhausted, "we cannot regain control of our own ship. The young humans have somehow learned our systems better than we know them ourselves." Jake had indeed learned the ship's systems. He had spent days crawling through maintenance tunnels, studying every circuit and computer. Now he knew exactly how to make the aliens' lives miserable. He had programmed the ship's food replicators to only make children's food, peanut butter sandwiches and apple juice. He had set all the clocks to show different times. He had made the gravity generators create bouncy zones where anyone walking through would start floating. "This is impossible," Captain Vexstar shouted as he bounced helplessly near the ceiling of his own bridge. "They are just children." "Perhaps," Krill suggested while spinning slowly in mid-air, "we should return them to their planet." "Never. We have invested too much in this raid. We will sell them at Taurus Station as planned." But Captain Vexstar was making another mistake. He thought the children were just causing random trouble. He didn't understand that everything they It was part of Sophie's plan. While Jake controlled the ship's systems and Amy led the freed alien children, Sophie and Danny were working on the most important part of their plan. They were learning everything they could about the slave trade. Danny had found the ship's records. His amazing memory allowed him to remember every detail about the aliens' operations. He memorized the locations of their bases, the names of their customers, and the routes they used to move slaves. Sophie organized the information and made plans. "We're not just escaping," she told the other children. "We're going to stop these aliens from ever hurting anyone again." "How?" asked Amy. "By making them sorry they ever heard of humans." Sophie's plan was brilliant and simple. The children would take complete control of the ship, then use it to rescue the other slaves and destroy the alien bases. But first, they had to deal with Captain Vekstar. The alien captain was getting desperate. In 2 more days, they would reach Taurus Station. He had to regain control of his ship before then, or he would lose everything. "We will use force," he decided. "Select 6 of the young humans. We will execute them as an example to the others." This was Captain Vekstar's final and worst mistake. He was about to threaten to kill human children, and the children were listening to everything he said through the ship's communication system. "He wants to hurt some of us," Sophie told the others, her voice calm but her eyes angry. "What do we do?" asked Tim. Sophie smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "We show him what happens when you threaten human children." The children's final operation began immediately. Jake shut down all power to the alien crew quarters. Danny used his knowledge of the aliens' routines to predict exactly where each crew member would be. Amy led teams of freed alien children to surround the crew. But Sophie did something that surprised everyone. She walked openly onto the ship's bridge, no longer hiding or sneaking. She looked Captain Vekstar right in the eyes. "Hello," she said politely. "I'm Sophie Williams. I'm 10 years old. And you're in big trouble." Captain Vekstar stared at the small human child standing in front of him. "How did you get here?" "Guards." "Your guards are busy," Sophie said. "They're locked in their rooms with no power, and 30 very angry alien children standing outside their doors. This is impossible. You are just a child." Sophie nodded. "Yes, I am. We all are. But you made one big mistake." "What mistake?" "You took us away from our parents." As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Jake's voice came over the communication system. "Sophie, you need to see this. We've got company." On the bridge's main screen, stars began appearing. Ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace around the alien vessel. Human ships, dozens of them, with more arriving every second. The lead ship was massive, bristling with weapons. Its hull was painted with the words UES Retribution in letters 10 feet tall. Captain Vekstar stared in horror as 47 human warships surrounded his lone vessel. "This cannot be happening," Sophie smiled. "You didn't just take some random children, Captain. You took human children. And humans really don't like it when someone messes with their kids." A voice came over the ship's communication system, broadcast from the UES Retribution. It was Admiral Morrison, and she sounded very calm and very dangerous. "Attention, alien vessel. You are holding 37 human children. You have exactly 60 seconds to return them unharmed, or we will take them back by force." Captain Vekstar looked at the screen showing the human fleet. Then he looked at Sophie, who was still smiling that not quite nice smile. 50 seconds. Admiral Morrison's voice continued. "We surrender." Captain Vekstar shouted into his communication system. "We surrender." "Don't shoot," Sophie nodded approvingly. "Good choice. Jake, open all the cage locks and give our new friends from other planets access to the communication system." I think they have some things they want to tell the Admiral. As the cages throughout the ship opened and dozens of young alien beings ran free, Sophie looked at Captain Vexstar one more time. "You know what your real mistake was?" she asked. "Taking your young?" the alien asked hopefully. "No," Sophie said. "Your mistake was thinking that being young made us weak. You're about to learn that young humans aren't weak at all. We're just getting started." Outside, the human fleet waited for their children to come home. Inside the ship, 37 human children and dozens of freed alien. Young had just proven that there was nothing more dangerous in the galaxy than young beings who refused to give up. The reckoning had begun, and the aliens were about to discover what happened when you made humanity angry. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the alien ship on her main screen. She had been in space battles before, but this was different. This was personal. Someone had taken human children, and that someone was about to learn why that was the worst mistake they could make. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from the alien vessel. It appears there are children from several species aboard. Put them through." The bridge speakers filled with young voices speaking in different languages, but all saying the same thing. "Help us. The humans saved us. Please help us get home." Admiral Morrison's jaw tightened. "How many children total?" "Over 100, Admiral. The aliens have been raiding multiple worlds. Prepare boarding parties. Full rescue operation." But before the Admiral could give the order, Sophie's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral Morrison, this is Sophie Williams. We've taken control of the alien ship. The bad guys have surrendered. We're all okay, and we've got a lot of other kids here who need help getting home." Admiral Morrison smiled for the first time since receiving the distress call. "Sophie Williams, this is Admiral Morrison. Are you in command of that vessel?" "Yes, ma'am." "Jake Martinez is our technical officer. Danny Chun is our intelligence officer. Amy Foster is our rescue coordinator. We've got everything under control. Outstanding work. We're coming aboard." "Thank you, Admiral. And ma'am, we've got a lot of information about the alien slave trade. These guys have been hurting kids from all over the galaxy. We think you're going to want to do something about that." Within an hour, the first human Marines boarded the alien ship. They found 37 human children, tired but proud, standing guard over a crew of defeated aliens. The children had also freed 83 young beings from 12 different species, all of whom had been destined for the slave markets. Captain Vexstar and his crew were taken into custody without resistance. They were too shocked and defeated to fight. A small group of human children had taken their ship, outsmarted their technology, and turned their own systems against them. "How?" Captain Vexstar asked as human Marines led him away. "How did they defeat us?" Admiral Morrison looked at the alien captain with contempt. "You made the mistake of thinking that being young made them helpless. But human children aren't helpless. They are learning. They're growing. They're becoming. And they're protected by every adult human in the galaxy." Jake was reunited with his parents, who had flown out with the rescue fleet. His father looked at the alien ship's computer systems that Jake had reprogrammed. "Son," he said with pride, "you've learned more about electronics in 3 days than most people learn in years." "I had to, Dad. They were going to sell us." Jake's father hugged him tight. "No one will ever sell you, son. We'll make sure of that." Sophie found herself talking to Admiral Morrison in the ship's command center. The Admiral was impressed by how the 10-year-old had organized the entire rescue operation. "You have real leadership skills," Admiral Morrison told her. "Have you ever thought about joining the space service when you're older?" Sophie grinned. "Maybe, but first I want to make sure this never happens to any other kids." "What do you mean?" Sophie pulled out a data pad that Danny had prepared. We learned everything about their operation, where their bases are, who buys slaves from them, what routes they use. We want to help you stop all of them. Admiral Morrison looked at the information. It was incredibly detailed and well organized. This is intelligence that would have taken our spies years to gather. Danny memorized everything, Sophie explained. He's really smart. And we all work together to understand how their whole operation works. Danny stepped forward, still shy but determined. They have 17 bases and 43 ships. They've taken children from 26 different worlds. If we act fast, we can save all of them. Admiral Morrison studied the young boy who had memorized an entire criminal organization structure in just a few days. Danny, how would you like to help us plan the rescue operations? Danny's eyes lit up. Really? I can help? We need someone who understands how these aliens think. You seem to know them better than anyone. Amy was busy helping the alien children communicate with the human medical team. She had learned some of their languages and was helping translate. The freed alien children stayed close to her, trusting the red-haired girl who had helped rescue them. Amy, one of the human doctors said, "You're very good with children from other species. Have you thought about becoming a xenobiologist?" Amy looked confused. A what? Someone who studies alien life. These children trust you. That's a rare gift, Amy smiled. I just treated them like I'd want to be treated. They were scared, just like we were. Over the next few weeks, the human fleet used the information the children had gathered to launch the largest anti-slavery operation in galactic history. 17 alien bases were destroyed. 43 slave ships were captured. Thousands of children and adults from dozens of worlds were freed and returned to their families. Captain Vextar and his crew were put on trial on 12 different worlds. Each world wanted justice for their stolen children. The trials became famous across the galaxy as the Millbrook Trials, named after the small Earth town where it all began. The children became heroes throughout human space and beyond. But more importantly, they had changed how the galaxy saw humanity. Before the Millbrook incident, many alien species thought humans were just another primitive race. After it, everyone knew the truth. Humans would go to any length to protect their children, and human children themselves were not to be underestimated. Jake grew up to become the youngest chief engineer in the Earth space fleet. He designed new ship systems that were impossible for enemies to hack or take over. Sophie joined the diplomatic corps and became Earth's youngest ambassador. She specialized in child protection laws and helped create the Galactic Child Safety Treaty, which made stealing children from any world punishable by every civilized government in the galaxy. Danny became a xenolinguist and intelligence analyst. He could predict how alien criminals would behave better than anyone else in human space. He helped solve dozens of cases and prevent countless crimes. Amy became a xenobiologist and founded the Interspecies Children's Rescue Organization. She personally led the rescue of over 3,000 children from slave traders and was known throughout the galaxy as the Red Angel. But the most important change was in the galaxy itself. Word spread quickly about what happened when someone threatened human children. The story was told on every world, in every language. On the water world of Aquanus, mothers sang lullabies about the brave human children who saved their young ones. On the mountain world of Petrux, warrior clans told stories of the small humans who defeated an entire ship with nothing but their minds and courage. The story changed as it was told, but the message was always the same. Humans protect their young, and human young are far stronger than they appear. A new saying became common. In the criminal underworld of the galaxy, you can steal from humans. You can fight humans. You can even try to conquer humans. But never ever touch their children. The slave trade in children didn't disappear entirely, but it almost did. No one wanted to risk bringing down the fury of humanity on their heads. Years later, when Jake, Sophie, Danny, and Amy were all adults with children of their own, they would sometimes meet and remember their adventure. They would look at their own kids playing safely and know that because of what they had done, children all across the galaxy were safer. Do you ever regret it? Amy asked during one of these meetings. Fighting back instead of just waiting to be rescued? Sophie, now Ambassador Williams, smiled as she watched her daughter build a fort out of couch cushions. Never. We showed the galaxy that human children aren't victims. We're survivors. We're fighters. And we take care of each other. Jake, now Chief Engineer Martinez, nodded. Besides, we had the best teacher. Who? Danny asked. Each other, Jake replied. We learned that when humans work together, especially young humans who haven't learned that things are impossible, there's nothing we can't do. The galaxy had learned that lesson too. In schools across hundreds of worlds, children learned about the Millbrook incident. They learned that being young didn't mean being weak. They learned that working together could overcome any enemy. They learned that sometimes the smallest people could make the biggest difference. And in the deepest, darkest corners of space, where criminals gathered to plan their next crimes, there was one rule that everyone followed. Don't mess with human children. Because 37 kids from a small town on Earth had proven that human children were the most dangerous force in the galaxy when they were angry, working together and absolutely refused to give up, the story of the Millbrook children became legend. But for Jake, Sophie, Danny, Amy, and all their friends, it was just the beginning of their adventures. They had learned they could do anything if they worked together, and the galaxy would never be the same.